Okay, this is assignment 2. The color map, you should pretty much know if you got wrong or right, and it just depends. You could use colors, you could use numbers like me, and your numbers could be different than mine, but you should be able to achieve them all with 4 or less. Couple, number 6, 4, and 6 were 3 colors. So these are the answers on the back. You should check them already. Some solving equations, solving inequalities, line checks, so forth. So pause it, check your answers. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and go through these. First equation is linear. You're solving for x, so you're just trying to get x by itself. Divide by a. X equals c minus b over a. There you go. Second one, move everything to one side. Factoring is easier than quadratic formula if it has rational roots. So let's try it. Minus 4 plus 2, that looks good. X equals 4 and negative 2, zero product property. Got to move everything on one side though. X to the fourth minus 8x equals 0. We can factor an x out, x cubed minus 8. And then we could solve that to 0, set this to 0. Cube root of both sides. X equals 2. So x equals 0 and 2. Actually, it seems good. Yeah, I don't know. I tried some other way. I think I factored this as a difference of cubes, which should work. It'd be x minus 2, x squared, 2 squared is 4. You guys remember that? Soap, same, always same, opposite, always positive. Middle, you multiply them times each other. So you get x equals 0, x equals 2, and then this can't be factored, so then you'd have to use quadratic formula. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Negative 2 plus or minus 4 minus 16 is negative 12. So we get negative 2 plus or minus square root of 4 can be taken out. And an I. And there's 3 left inside. So you could write this negative 1 plus or minus I root 3. But those are imaginaries, so we don't need them. But interesting how those kind of don't come up. Well, we solved this, but there should be 4 roots. So, all right. Solving trig. Isolate the trig, subtract 1, divide by 2, ignore the negative alpha. When does sign equal? When you should have the sine curve in your head. So 0, 1/2, root over 2, root over 2, 1. So 1/2 is that first angle, which is 30 degrees or pi over 6. Now it is negative in quadrants 3 and 4, so usually you get multiple answers. So a lot of times I would write down all the infinite answers. All right, quadrant 3 is be 180 plus 30 is 210 plus 360k, or pi plus pi over 6 is 7b, 7 pi over 6 plus 2 pi k. Quadrant 4 would be 360 minus alpha, so 330 degrees plus 360k, which would be 2 pi minus pi over 6, which would be 11 pi over 6 plus 2 pi k. So if we want all the answers from 0 to 2 pi, that would be 210 and 330, but I do want radians. So it'd be 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. You should be able to do radians and degrees without having to convert from one to the other. Okay, next one, we're going to move everything to one side. 4x cubed minus 4x squared minus x plus 1. Put it in standard form, highest degree to lowest degree. Now, we could jump into rational root theorem with the cubic, but I like to always just try grouping. 4x squared, x minus 1, minus 1, x minus 1. Ooh, grouping works now. You group the first two and you group the last two and you take out the GCFs, and if you have what's the same inside left over, then it's like you can then factor those out and you have an x minus 1, and then here there's a 4x squared minus 1 left over. So that would be 2x minus 1, 2x plus 1, and you would get x equals 1, 1 half, negative 1 half. So I think that's the easy way to do it. Otherwise, you could do rational root theorem, which sometimes you have to do. So we just got lucky this time. Usually grouping doesn't work. We try rational root theorem. And so that would be P over Q equals plus or minus. This is your P's, this is your Q's. So plus or minus 1, plus or minus 1 half, plus or minus 1/4. Ooh. Hopefully 1 or negative 1 works. So if you try 1 in here, you get 4 minus 4 is 0. Positive 1 works. So then you can use synthetic division. 4, negative 1, 1. Drop the first number down. Multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add. You should get a 0 at the end if you've done everything right. So now you have x minus 1. That's where plus 1 root comes from, the x minus 1 factor. And this is going to be 4x squared minus 1 equals 0. And then we're getting to the same. And then I would just factor this difference of squares. That's the easiest way to do it. Same answers. So got options, but that grouping thing's slick when it works, which it usually doesn't it? Okay, solving inequality. So this is linear, so we could just add 2 to both sides, divide by 4, and say x is less than or equal to 3. Now I want this in interval notation. So it's going to be negative infinity to 3 bracket. Okay, this one, you want to move everything to one side. It's polynomial. We can try and factor it. Minus 2 plus 1. So get the roots, 2 and negative 1, and we're going to do a line check. These are open dots. Test a value. X equals 3. False, true, false. Negative 1 to 2, parentheses. There you go. All right, this one is already on one side. It's all on the single fraction. It's all factored for you. So x equals 2. X equals negative 3, which we have a little star next to. X equals plus or minus 1 are your vertical asymptotes. So we're going to do a line check. Negative 3, everything's open dot. Negative 1, positive 1, positive 2. Don't forget that guy. Test. X equals 3, positive, 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 which is false, true, false, true, true. So final answer is negative infinity, negative 3. You got to break it up. Union, negative 3, negative 1, parentheses, union, 1, 2, parentheses. There you go. Okay, got another polynomial inequality, x cubed plus 3x squared minus 4 is greater than or equal to 0. So this is cubic, but grouping for sure is not going to work because you need an even number of terms. So we're definitely trying rational root theorem. P over Q equals plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 4. This is your Q, this is your P, this is your Q. Looking for all the possible fractions that can be created by all the roots or the factors of those. So I'm going to try 1 in my head. 1 plus, positive 1 works. Yeah, nice. I'm going to use rational, I'm going to use synthetic division to divide it out. So there's 1, 3. I got to put a 0 for the x terms that aren't there. Drop the first term down, multiply, add 4, 4, add 4, 4, add 0. That's a good sign. If it's not 0, something's wrong. So x minus 1 got factored out, doesn't disappear. X squared plus 4x plus 4. And then once you get down to a quadratic, second degree, don't use rational theorem anymore. Just factor it normal. Or if you can't factor it, that means you got to use quadratic formula anyways. Okay. X equals 1, x equals -2. That one has an even multiple power. So, solid dot, -2, solid dot, 1, little star there. Don't forget about test. X equals 2, positive, true, false, false. Now, people are going to say the answer is bracket 1 to positive infinity, but it's also -2 all by itself. Left to right. Okay, number 24. Go to trig inequality. Everything's on one side equals 0. Factor it. Zero product property, set each of these 0. Solve for trig. Isolate the trig. Plus 1 divided by 2. Sine equals 0 at 0 plus 180k, or 0 plus pi k. All right, this one alpha is 30 degrees, or pi over 6. It's in quadrants 1 and 2, that's positive. So x equals 30 degrees plus 360k. X equals 150 degrees plus 360k. In radians, x equals pi over 6 plus 2 pi k. And x equals pi minus pi over 6, 5 pi over 6 plus 2 pi k. So none of these are balances for trig. That's when sine or cosine equals plus or minus 1 once you isolate it, which isn't happening here. So we got 0, 180, 360, 30, and 150, or 0, pi, 2 pi, pi over 6, 5 pi over 6. So line check, look for values from 0 to pi. So these are all open dots. 0, 360, or 0 degrees, 360 degrees to pi, pi over 6, and 5 pi over 6. Test value. I like test 0, but I can't this time. So I guess another one would be like 180 or 90. Let's try 90. 90 seems good. Sine of 90 is 1, so that's 2 minus 1 is 1, is false. Make sure you remember where that's false. True, false, true, false, true. So your answers are 0 to pi over 6, union 5 pi over 6 to pi. That's it. Or 0 degrees to 30 degrees. If we're doing degrees, you should use a degree symbol. Otherwise, no symbol indicates. We are assuming it's radians. So there you go. So hopefully you get the hang of that. That was at least a week's worth of work from Calc AB we did in one day. That's fine. So I'll review. be good at this stuff.